So I think it's really important for the black community in Boston and the greater Boston area to be engaged in the advocacy around criminal law reform. I currently work at the ACLU of Massachusetts as the Racial Justice Director, but what I recognize is in the work that I do, pushing for criminal law reform, a lot of that advocacy is informed by my role as a prosecutor. I served for 8 years as an assistant district attorney in Suffolk County, and I got a real good look at how this system works and how it doesn't work and who it doesn't work for. I started out in Dorchester District Court and then moved on to Superior Court and handled gang, homicide, and drug cases, and got to see how this system is not serving the people who are most directly impacted by that. And it begins as early as what is happening in our schools. There's an overwhelming disparity in how black children are disciplined. Prior to coming to the ACLU, I was at the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights and Economic Justice, and we released a report that looked at discipline rates in Massachusetts, and it showed that 1 in 27 white students are disciplined compared to 1 in 12 Latino students and 1 in 8 black students, and that's for non-violent, non-drug, non-criminal offenses. So this is for running in the hall or not bringing your homework or speaking disrespectfully to a teacher. And there's nothing that suggests that black students or Latino students are more disruptive or worse behaved than white students. It speaks to the disparity and the disparate treatment that they're subjected to. And there's a connection between the amount of discipline that students are subjected to and suspensions and ultimately removal from schools and school dropout rates. And there's also a correlation between suspensions and discipline and involvement in the criminal justice system. And so when you have it starting that early in the educational system, you see that there's problems. Another thing is the way that our communities are policed. The ACLU in 2013 released a report called Black, Brown, and Targeted, and it showed that even though black people only make up 24% of the city of Boston's population, they make up 63% of the people who have been stopped or investigated by police officers. And, you know, one of the arguments to support that is to say, well, that's because that's where all the crime is. But the researchers who looked at that study or conducted that study controlled for crime, and they looked at similar communities or communities with the same crime rates, one white, one black, and it showed that there was a disparity in the amount of stops in the black community. And so that shows that when you have a system that doesn't treat its children right and it is over policed, and then when you look at wealth and health disparities in communities, there's this funnel that is putting people into the criminal justice system, and people are disproportionately held on bail. And when I say people, I mean black and Latino people are disproportionately held on bail for longer lengths of time for greater amounts of money. They're sentenced at higher rates, and a big issue is the district attorneys. One of the things that we're doing at the ACLU is doing a public awareness campaign to let people know the role and the power that district attorneys have. Many people don't know who the district attorney is, or how much power they have, or what they're responsible for, or who they're accountable to. 77% of elections for district attorneys in the last 20 some odd years were uncontested. So that means nobody is challenging any of the people who sit in the positions of power to decide who gets charged, what they get charged with, and what type of sentencing recommendations will be made in the court. So that's a very powerful position that people aren't aware of. And so the work that we're engaged in here at the ACLU is really trying to raise that awareness and change the criminal justice system to one that is more reflective and responsive to the needs of the communities. Another big issue is mandatory minimums. Mandatory minimums are sentences that are imposed on individuals. There's no opportunity for parole, no opportunity for early release or good time credit. People aren't allowed to be released for furloughs, and there are these lengthy and exorbitant sentences. It's this one-size-fits-all approach to people whose lives bring them to these crisis points, and a judge has no opportunity to sentence someone based on what is the best or appropriate sentence for that individual. And their hands are bound because the district attorneys hold all the power. And whatever the district attorney says is the appropriate sentence for someone, if they're charged with a mandatory minimum, is the sentence that needs to be imposed. Again, that is a lot of power for one individual to have, and it's not fair. And so we're advocating to really push that, to change that, to repeal mandatory minimum offenses for drug crimes. So there's a lot of advocacy that can be happening, that has been happening. I'm inspired by all of the young people that I'm seeing engaged in these advocacy issues. And I think once we really tap into the collective power that we have as a people, once we can, when we take the organizing that's been happening in this city to another level and work in solidarity with other oppressed peoples, then that is when we have the opportunity to really make a significant difference and transform the landscape of what this city looks like. There's no reason that the seats of power in the city of Boston and in the greater Boston area and even throughout the Commonwealth don't appropriately and accurately reflect the communities that are here. So I look forward to seeing how much we're able to do, but there's a real issue with us continuing to press on the levers of power and make our voices heard.